Dana. Welcome to the Scenic podcast.
Hi, thank you.
Today, you're in for a treat. You too, Dana. I'm just kidding. No, everyone listening. Because we haven't talked about this topic here on the Scenic before, so I'm really excited. And ever since I read an interview um, with Serena Williams, where she was talking about how she is like adjusting her training cycle to her menstruation cycle. I was like, oh, interesting. Tell me more. So even if we're not like Serena Williams or have any other super athletic ambitions, like there's something in it for us as well, isn't there, Dana?
There is, as females, yeah, yeah. There's um, all sorts of really cool things as women, females, a human body that has two ovaries, fallopian tubes, and a uterus, or maybe no one ovary, whatever. That's what mean when I say a female body. But in our menstruating years, we have this really cool cycle that we go through, and there's been a lot of talk about it recently, which has been pretty cool. That's something I'm a little passionate about.
So I'm sure everyone listening in has some basic biology understanding of what goes on in your body through your cycle, or at least I hope so. But nonetheless, can you walk us through like the female energy cycle and like the different phases and kind of give us like just a quick update on what is happening when and how that relates to or how that might relate to our physical well-being and to how we feel.
Yeah. So I think kind of I like to, something I've been speaking to a lot lately that I really love, and I think it's resonating more for all of us is I think it's useful to keep in mind that our menstrual cycle is both affected by every part of our existence. So it's connected to our nervous system for good reason. And it's also this incredible biofeedback mechanism. So it communicates to us in sensations if we're in balance or not. So again, most of us grew up in societies that were just now stepping into giving ourselves permission to talk about these things and to explore these things, and perhaps looking at older cultures that had healthy menstrual cycle awareness and healthy pieces and incorporating that into our life. But just the basic cycle. So when you're in your menstruating years, it's considered the day one of your cycle when you first start bleeding, which is a little counterintuitive for a lot of people. They think most females feel like once we stop mooning, bleeding, menstruating, however you want to say that,
Mhm.
that's like the beginning of our cycle. But scientifically, yeah, from Western perspective, it's that day one is when we start bleeding, when the estrogen comes right back in again. I refer to that phase, because I don't love the scientific names, terminologies. I refer to that phase as a sage phase, because when we're bleeding, there's a lot of cool subtle energy pieces going on. Like most of our energy, or you can say chi, but that all of the
Yeah.
energy is really down in our uterus, and our uterus is contracting more, shedding the uterus lining. And it's actually not blood that we're shedding. It's stem cells and tissues and fluid, which is really cool.
Yeah.
Which Dr. Christine Northrup talked about this in her old
Mhm.
book. And it's also been spoken of that we would use this fluid to actually garden with and to put out in
Yeah.
nature. I mean, before we had
We heard about
bathrooms.
with the placenta that you would plant a
Oh, yeah.
tree.
Oh, well, placentas actually on the market, I've been told recently, are going for $40,000
Oh
USD.
dear.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah. Yeah.
okay.
And so
Oh,
also
that's
too,
money down the drain.
scientists have been wanting the menstrual fluid as well because of all that stem cell in there, the stem cells, and all those minerals. There's really cool pieces, but just that act of when we're bleeding, it's our energy is concentrated down more in the womb. And when you start going into that phase and working with it, you can get a lot of really cool creativity and have some great experiences
Mhm.
when you're more flowing in your balance. I have shared this with people for years about, a lot of times when I will go into my bleeding phase, I have felt like I've been like kind of just flowing down this river, this warm river being held. And people look at me like, what are you talking about? Because I think a lot of people have, no, most everyone I have talked with, and I ask questions, and I talk with people for
Mhm.
years and years about their experience, what's life like, da 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 da. And most of us were not taught any of these things. And we weren't
Yeah.
allowed to talk about these things
Yeah.
either.
And I
So
mean,
like,
yeah.
how do you know what you don't know? Right?
True, true. And I just remembered I back in my ad agency days, did a campaign for like company who does sanitary products for females. And like we were not allowed to color like the blood red. Like it's always blue in advertising. When you look at it, like
My God,
always
it is. Yeah.
an OB, it's always blue. And it's like, I'm a Smurf, it's not blue. Like it has different colors, but it's not blue.
I know, I totally get it. I have a little bit of compassion, I guess, in a piece because like I have that interesting piece that I'm trying to work on healing, transforming, but I guess they have a medical term for it where like when people take my blood, they
Mhm.
draw blood, I pass out. I don't mean
Yeah.
to, I pass out. So
Yeah, there
the
it is a
thing
medical
that
condition, as far as I know. Yeah.
people have told me like it's really common. I was like, oh, okay, good. That makes me feel not so weird. But like some people, when they see blood, they do like pass out or they throw up. So like I kind of get it,
Yeah,
like
I
on
don't
that
want that to
aspect.
happen to you when you're on a bike and you're riding past like a billboard. And yes, fair
You're driving
point.
a car, like I have compassion and try to like, I'm not tiptoeing around things and I'm not trying to trigger people. We all have our own filters of perception and lived experiences, right?
Mm,
But I kind of get it in a certain way.
sure.
And I think over time, perhaps it'll become more unstigmatized, but like whatever, it's the slow evolution.
Or we could
It's
just go for like, I don't know, something unicorn glittery or something,
oh my God, I love that. Yeah.
something like fancy, rainbow glittery.
Gold. You know, there's even a
Ooh,
woman
yeah.
who wrote a book, I think it's called like Your Blood is Gold, because she has, think of this, she said there's some, I don't know if she found studies or there has been found trace elements, which would make sense that there is gold in menstrual fluid. If you drink water and there's gold naturally occurring in mineral, it's a mineral, right?
Yeah.
Like walnut trees don't exist unless there's mercury around their roots. So walnut trees naturally have mercury in them, right? That's how they part of the nutrients they need. So gold might be a
Oh,
cool, I love gold. Yeah.
yeah, up for gold. Okay, we will both vote gold, so change approved. So we have the sage phase, which is kind of like the first phase. So when you start bleeding. So then like when we go into like what happens after the bleed, like in what I suppose is the second phase.
Yeah. So again, it's so funny to because like now that everyone's talking, a lot of people share about like, oh, I'm in this phase, but there's so many different perspectives. Like how many
Mm,
different ways can you slice an orange and speak to it, right? So I like to look and honor more of the traditional Chinese medicine phases, and I kind of put my own names on it. But I do have a cool chart in the book you have that adds all those pieces. Western medicine sees it in two phases with two events in those phases. So follicular and luteal with menstruation and ovulation in those two phases.
mhm,
Um, once we finish once we're no longer bleeding, then we go into which I refer to often as that maiden phase, where, after we physically no longer feel heavy in our uterus anymore, like, and the estrogen has been rising and the testosterone is going to start kicking in soon too. We want to go out and get things done. Like we want to be out in the world. I don't know if you've experienced this, but I absolutely have like, because I'm kind of physically, a little bit different now. Like I have definitely had to kind of reground into my body when I'm in yoga, doing
mm.
different yoga positions. Like I feel a little off kilter because I've just shifted from one felt experience state into a different one. But
Oh,
this phase, right, is characteristically kind of like this outward, like we're free, we can go out in the world and run around
yeah.
and get
I'm
things
the queen
done.
of the
And
world. I can like do anything, which is
yeah.
nice because because there's also a time when where or at least for me I feel rather mopey. So it's good that there's a balance.
Yeah. Yeah. And then adding in that mopiness, like, kind of just, okay, what is this? Where is it? Is it the mopiness from if you're in your, menstruating, your bleeding days? And like, for me, I love to go out and get things done. So sometimes when like body's like, nope, it's going to be rest time. I'm like, part of me is like, oh, I want to go out. So like, I may get a little at times in resistance to that and mopey. And then I go in and I start doing some of my tools to help clear that resistance and just surrender into the ease that my body's craving.
Mm,
But I totally understand. So adding in that piece of what is what's showing up for you. Maybe
mhm,
it's mopey, but when you get that the estrogen coming in, which can be felt for a lot of people as like a lightness, a brightness, and then that testosterone, and witness this for yourself. See what it's like.
mhm,
If your body's flowing in balance, some people, their cycles are all over the place depending on what their cycle is experiencing. If they're in a lot of stress and ingesting a lot of caffeine and anxiety, it can be all over the place. This pattern may be a little bit more choppy for their experience, but generally flowing in a traditional normal cycle balance. You've got the menstruating, and then you've got this. We also call it the sage or the maiden phase. You can call it pre-ovulation. So
mhm.
estrogen's rising. You generally just feel light and you want to go out and get things done. And that testosterone, it starts kicking in. I have noticed I'll definitely have more of an oomph. Like I can do
Mm,
things.
mhm,
Because soon as that 24-hour window of ovulation occurs and my progesterone kicks in and we start going into the next phase, like I call it the enchantress, you can call it there's a lot of different names, but ovulation already happens and you're now going into, if there's no sperm inside of you and you're not going to make a baby, it's just going to be this chill time. It's just this like kind of relax. And um, the ovulation, which I usually call the mother phase, which is also like relaxing. It's just it's the when that testosterone's no longer there and we're just more in this, I'm happy to be out in the world, but, I don't really care, if I'm the center of the universe, like that testosterone when it starts to dissolve. And again, there's layers in this, how our mind has been perceiving lived
Yeah.
experiences. And if we're engaged in those inner subconscious patterns of good, bad, right or wrong, shame and blame, these things all can be expressed and felt and lived in different experiences. But
Mhm.
there's distinct patterns. And so like females have definitely been looking at and being like, hey, okay, how do I honor these cycles and work with them better? Some people have been a little bit too extreme.
What is too
Oh,
extreme? Because you just not do certain things, or like, how would you define too extreme? When it's
too
like
extreme
completely
that is,
controlling your life,
yeah.
or
So how do I it's like let me reorganize my, life structure. And I've heard some public figure who's written a lot of books tell women that they basically need to sleep for their whole menstrual cycle and they should be sleeping for their uh during their premenstrual phase. Um I really spent a long time in meditation and contemplative thought, looking at patterns in nature where this exists and how, because when we look at that perspective of like, oh, women should be doing this, it's like, okay, first off, you're shitting on me.
yeah,
Don't
we
shit on
don't do
me.
shoulds here. We don't do shoulds. We
Don't
hate
shit on
shoulds.
me,
Yeah,
and that particular person I'm thinking of, she experienced a great amount of menstrual issues throughout her life. And she's naturally, like any of her reviews of people that have listened to her talk have kind of witnessed that she very much has it's my way or the highway, very controlling. So when we are
yeah.
stuck in
No,
these
we're not doing
ideas of
this.
control, right, then we
Mm,
have our nervous system goes out the window, our menstrual cycle's all messed up. So she's
yeah,
trying to rebuild her behaviors for subconscious issues.
yeah,
So if we're, honor where you're at, but like let's look at some other ways to perhaps help us. Because I definitely generally have most of my cycles now with me learning how to nurture what my body needs and flowing my balance, where I generally flow through. Where a lot of times, unless I'm, really actively tracking it and looking at my Moontime app, all of a sudden I'll start bleeding and be like, oh, like I was haven't able to working it
yeah,
so well where like I'm not getting the old, premenstrual irritation and aggravation and vulnerability and irritability that I used to feel when I would be going on all cylinders, working way too hard, way too fast, way too much drama, way too much caffeine, and burning my
yeah,
my body out, right?
yeah,
So yeah, sleeping and self-isolating, like of course, if somebody's in a lot of pain and you're working with someone one-on-one that you trust and have a lot of positive results, and they're like, and you can create this space. I do, if you have the time when you're the first like 2 days when you're bleeding, if you can create this space for yourself to rest a little bit more, yes, 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 yes.
yeah.
But
If you feel it's doing you good, I
yeah,
mean, yes, go for it, right? I mean,
listen to your body, find your own balance. Everyone's so unique. There's no one right way. Yeah. And everyone's
yeah.
so beautiful. It's like, what's happening here?
I think one of my catch no, it's not one of my catches, or when I catch my clients to be like, let's look into this. It's like when they're like, oh, if then, if I don't know, watch my cycle and do whatever, then I am whatever I think about. Then I get to think this about myself. Then I'm always like, well, this is probably something you should look into. Why is it like? Why is or become something an obsession? What do you tell yourself about yourself when you like I don't know obsess about your cycle? You like you're a better woman or whatever. Where is like some sort of underlying shame, mostly of like let's
Yeah.
treat carefully. Yeah,
Yes, it's we're all just flowing in our own balance, and I want everyone to give themselves a big hug because, like, the generational, stuff that we're essentially healing and transforming out of our own experience is incredible,
yeah,
and it's wonderful, and it's also at times can be challenging, like, I can't tell you how many stories I know of women, like my mom, my female wellness practitioner, her mom and her grandmother both had doctors had them remove their uteruses unnecessarily, just like all sorts of interesting things that were essentially done because of lack of education, lack of
yeah,
information, and it's fascinating. It's
yeah.
fascinating.
This is so interesting that you bring this up. I have endometriosis. I think I've mentioned it as before. So I will have another question regarding that. But regarding uterus, and I also have adenomyosis, so the endometriosis in the uterus lining. And it was always so baffling to me. Thank God not like my female reproduction doctor, but other doctors when the topic came up of like, oh, you'll most likely be cleared of your symptoms if we just remove your uterus. And if you don't want to have any more kids, you don't need it. I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure it's an appendix though. Like I'm not a doctor, but it's not just like an appendix. I'd like to
Good
keep my
call.
uterus. Thank you. I
Yeah.
couldn't really pinpoint why exactly at the time. I'm just like, it seems a bit drastic to just like, I mean, I get there are medical conditions where this is really like maybe the best only course of action. But for
Yeah.
me, I was like, it was just so lightheartedly like said as we were, I don't know, if you were talking about the weather and you're like, No, actually, yeah. So,
Yeah, no, that's it's very common, sadly. But things are changing. I think more OBGYNs and more practitioners, like I'm trained in subconscious change work, NLP based, so rapid resolution therapy and core transformation. And I've trained with a slew of MDs, which is amazing. And not just for, how the unconscious mind is stuck in programs, but just more practitioners are getting into different ways of working with things to help their clients in a more of a holistic way. Because I
mm,
think it's rad having all of these options. But I think what a lot of the female wellness practitioners that I work with and admire, we're all saying it's about informed consent. Like, what are my options here? Instead of just removing this uterus that it's kind of important to have. You want, in my personal opinion, I want my uterus functioning full optimal health for as long as possible. I want to actually personally have my menstrual cycle as long as I can because it's my body's producing estrogen and that's helping keep my body and my immune system really strong and
also
healthy and
bone
vital.
structure, like it's
Yeah. So once, I mean, I am looking forward to my menstrual years because it's that wise woman where your body absorbs, all of it and you just have more access to testosterone. And it's like, look out world, but your bones start becoming more brittle. We were not producing estrogen and I'm hypersensitive. I'm one of those weirdos on a bell curve that's like, I'm allergic to codeine. Like, I'm like, let's just not play this game. We all know that my body does not work well with that. I'm more subtle and gentle and soft things work better for my body. So hormones, taking artificial hormones, I'm like, that's really not an option for my body. Like I love
mm,
alcohol and all these things, but the taste of it, my body's like, hard pass. Like I'll feel like crap for 3 days. I'm like, okay, so I
well,
prize
yeah.
my energy. I live in Napa. Like everyone makes an amazing wine around here. I'm like, wah, wah, wah. Yeah, my body.
Love this journey for me. Yeah.
Like, sorry, like I'll enjoy you enjoying it, but I can't. So
Yeah.
I pay attention to all that stuff. And I love having people being aware of more options of ways to, help their body
Mm.
flow in their own balance. And, just chopping things out, which was a very old Western perspective, is extremely archaic and not necessary for maybe, a lot of people. There are other options, but it
Mm.
is rad to have that there. I just don't, it's
Oh
not the
God, yes. I mean, I
only.
don't want to go back into like the Middle Ages where we had no options except like
What was it?
people or something.
1726 in Scotland. That's where they invented the
Yeah,
chainsaw to open a woman's pelvis
I
and pull out
think
the baby. It's like,
I think
oh
so. Yeah.
my
Oh, I should
God.
notice. I was at the History of Medicine Museum in Edinburgh, which is quite a fantastic and
History
weird
of
place.
Western medicine, right?
Yes. Yes.
Because
Oh
when you
yeah.
look at
Yes. This is
The
very true.
Mayans were around for, God, I think at least 5,000 years, and they had a thriving societies of millions of people. And they didn't do, their medical system was more similar to traditional Chinese medicine. And
Mm.
some people point to, when the continents were closer, maybe, they shared information. And they didn't do the surgeries like we did. And they still had thriving
Yeah.
societies and
So
babies. And
females must have
so
had babies.
oh yeah, absolutely. And that's another reasons why I love so much of the Mayan medicine and Maya womb massage, abdominal massage. Like if anyone's listening to this and they have an opportunity to have a really great like uterus womb massage, that's a game changer. Game
I never heard of
changer.
this.
Oh my God. Oh my goodness.
I'm gonna Google practitioners. Like what
Yes.
I'm interested. I'm
Okay,
intrigued.
so our uterus is shifting and moving
Hmm.
throughout our cycle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So think about it. It's a physical component. So if you
Yes. Very mechanical.
beautiful massage to help as the uterus wanders. You're getting blood flow into the connective tissues,
Mm,
right? So it can move easier instead of getting stuck. Like a
yeah.
lot of women will have a tilted uterus, which they don't know. And right before, I mean, this is what I heard from one practitioner explain when she had it, when she didn't realize, and she had pretty great menstrual cycles, she said, but during a period of her life, all of a sudden, right before she'd go to bleed, menstruate, um, she would be in pain, crippling down to her knees, to where she had to go to the hospital. And she's like, "Am I, what is happening?" And she said, by chance, she went to like a well women's, checkup at a, I don't know if it was Planned Parenthood or something, and the practitioner knew. It was like, "Oh, hey, you have a tilted uterus," and she was like, "Wait, what?" And
Yeah. I
then this
know.
was before Mayan abdominal massage was just kind of coming to the United States, and so she got connected up, and she drove really far, and she had someone help this wandering uterus, which is kind of the basis, a lot of the whole well, not masturbation, that's just natural. The term hysteria in Western medicine, where
Yeah.
doctors used to manually go in and, that to orgasm, right?
Yeah.
Because our nervous system is designed to be, moving and being in
In
pleasure.
flow. Yeah.
Yes. So that womb massage, I mean, when you start reading all of the benefits of having experiencing that, I was just reading on Pilar Chandler's. She's an incredible. She's a doctor of Ayurvedic medicine, has a thriving practice in Southern California, amazing herbalist, and she was recently talking about the birth portal and the Kundalini energy, and as the baby starts turning
Hmm.
to come in, that our menstrual cycle phases is kind of prepping us for if and when we choose to have a baby, because of the cycles is so similar to the cycles of giving birth. And it was so refreshing to hear another practitioner speak to these things. it's
Yep.
um it just warms my heart, and it just kind of lets me deeply breathe and feel inspired and happy and grateful all in one big swoop.
Yeah, and I mean, also for me, because like from like a medical point of view, I often hear like, "Oh, we don't know," right? Like, I mean, we don't know about endometriosis. We don't know if that's going to work or whatever. I mean, I don't know. It's just half the like, I don't know, female population is just half the population. But hey, who cares? At least we have Viagra, right? So hey, yay, kudos us. Um, but it's really also like validating and interesting to hear. Oh, there is now more research. There are other practitioners who are looking at a female body and how certain things just move differently, right? And yeah, and I feel it's very validating instead of like, oh, we don't know, or like Western medicine, we don't know. I'm like, okay, thanks, I guess.
Well,
But
we didn't. Oh, keep going.
sorry. I was just wondering, like you said before, you're tracking a lot of things. Like I got this from you. Like you're paying attention to a lot of things, mindset wise or body wise, like how this is affecting you, and I suppose also your menstrual vitality. Um, what are like the most surprising, um, or often overlooked things that affect your menstrual vitality that people are like, oh, I never thought of that.
Yeah, thanks. That's a great question. For me, I think my one of my biggest game changers was that subconscious component. So
Oh,
how
tell
the
us more. We're all
unconscious.
subconscious here on the Scenic Grad. We're like, yes.
Oh, I love it. Oh, I love it. So the subconscious mind's pretty much around 95% of our daily thoughts. And
Yeah.
these filters of perception are formed from around birth to 7, 8 years old.
Yes. Formative
Um,
years.
Yes. And, I am one of those, I'm a very curious person. And I also, most of my life was like, I don't feel right. I don't understand why all is happening. So I'd keep, let me try this therapy. Let me try this help. Let me go and do this healing work. Let me work with this shaman. And you name it, I've probably tried it, and I'm probably certified in it. And I have been obviously studying and working with the menstrual cycle, because once we're in our own flow, that helps us be present and thrive in life, both financially, emotionally, mentally, when we're flowing in our own balance. But for what I have found, and was the biggest game changer for me, is I think it was my second session I experienced of having, as a client, I went and was having rapid resolution therapies. It was during
Mhm.
COVID, and I had already been a trainer, a teacher in like energy meditation for a very long time, and just a student of this work for so long, and plus doing every other therapy you could think of. And I thought I'm good. I can handle this stuff. During COVID, move back home to be with family, get out of LA and avoid the crazy crime and stuff coming. And okay, let me just be here. And oh my God, nope. Like my family could not, see me as a adult, and I took off, and I was like, what is happening? And I was lit up by all this old, I like to call it complex trauma, because like I didn't really experience any physical
Mm.
trauma in my life. I just have a really, you could say, a lot of energy with a mind that is curious. So overactive imagination, whatever you want to say, but you can call it complex trauma. And things were filters of perception of things that my mind perceived as threatening to my life. I giggle now because it was just like little, like, Dana, little events in the past, but it's in my unconscious. I had no idea. And it's not something I could consciously change. Had these sessions. And once I really started, the practitioner helped me clear
Mhm.
these things and transform the way my mind was processing information and help me heal these things. Holy shit, that whole sense of I'm not good enough, gone. I just am. It's not, I'm not good enough, or I'm
Yeah,
too
I
good.
love this.
I just am. Like, oh my God. It was the first time I actually got to experience for myself neutrality of like, oh my God, I got so much energy back. And I was like, oh my God, I want to help my Moontime community, women, whoever experience this. I'm like, this is available to us as humans. I'm in. Where do I sign up? I immediately went
Especially
train.
for us female, like, oh my God, like if we just reclaim back some of that capacity that we spend on all this shit,
Yeah.
like, like, I don't know. I call matriarchy is on our doorstep. Like,
Oh yeah, you were right there. Like it's not about asking permission. It's not about conceptualizing it. Oh, let me just think about it, or like I'll have positive mindsets, or I'll imagine I'm doing it. It's like I really strongly suggest anyone interested in this, go have the experiences, because working with somebody, I mostly with my clients, once I clear out, you can call them big meta parts or big, complex trauma pieces, I'll usually bring people through like RRT session 1 or 2, and then bring them to a core transformation based NLP session where you really get to step into these embodied states where you heal these parts within yourself. And I mean, all of it feels amazing, but it's a lived experience. It's not a conceptual piece that you think about. You have these deep healing like states where you go into and you're like, I don't know what just happened. I don't know how this just happened. I'll never be the same. This is incredible. Oh my God. And I almost want to, like, it's kind of like an enlightenment experience. Like, I know it's kind of dumbing down the whole enlightenment we all think of these yogis doing, but like, I've known of monks that trained in core transformation, and they said to the Andreas family who came up with the core transformation NLP, that's like, this is incredible. Like, after essentially 10 questions, somebody with no background can step into having these ecstatic states where monks will spend their entire lives in meditation and discipline trying to experience within essentially 10 questions. So
Wow. Yeah.
for me right now, I'm really excited because it's all here for us, for everyone, but for women to step back into our vitality and just, I feel we have access to just flowing in, life is going to happen, right? We're still going to come
Sure.
up to
We can now
experiences,
control this. Yeah.
but feeling pleasure and freedom and neutrality and resourceful in our own sense of self, like, yes, please. I'm like, where do
Yes.
I sign up? Like, I
Yes.
mean, yeah. And for endometriosis, like, that I keep seeing there are, things people suggest and stuff, but I keep hearing it come back into that inflammation piece,
Yeah.
right? And that inflammation
It's
piece is
crucial.
really the stress, right? The fight or flight. So pieces to, help the unconscious mind heal, shift, transform where those stress responses are coming in. And through these perspectives, instead of like, I hear other people like, oh, let's just down regulate your nervous system. To me, those are kind of like band-aids. I want everyone to have access. I love somatic work, but I want you also, so you're not just constantly putting band-aids and trying to control your system, work with somebody to help go into where, heal those deepest parts where that information, those parts of ourself are that deepest craving, that need, it really needs, letting it step in and have that. So everything can be healed and all of those
Yeah.
unconscious
Really go
beliefs
to the
be
root.
transformed and get to the root of it,
Yeah. Which makes sense, right? If you pull out a weed, you might better take it by the root.
Yes. Yes.
Um, yeah. Speaking of endometriosis, so I remember before I had a diagnosis and I was off birth control. Like I knew my cycle. I didn't have to track it. I knew when I was ovulating. I knew when the menstruation would kick in. Like I just knew, like, to the day. Um, and now currently one of the main treatments in Western medicine for endometriosis after the surgery, after the removal of endometriosis tissue, is going on birth control. So I don't have a cycle per se. Um, what what do you recommend people who would like to work in a more cyclic approach to go with the moon cycle, or
So
what is
that's a
your
really
thoughts on that?
great question. And I think it's, even if you have, if you're on chemical hormonal birth control or not, and I always suggest, because everyone's so unique, is every day kind of check in with yourself.
Mm.
What is showing up for you right now? When we go into which I call our wise woman or sage phase of our life, when we're in our menopausal years, which is a badass time. It's amazing. Your cycle becomes the moon cycle.
Mm.
So your natural cycle, if you're no longer menstruating, your natural cycle becomes the moon cycle. So I've talked to some of my educators on this, you can call them elders, like Jane Bennett and Francesca Naish, who are the Sydney holistic longtime practitioners, kind of experts, and have written a slew of books. And they have always shared that when we're on hormonal birth control pills, that we're experiencing the moon cycle, but we're not necessarily flowing with it. So again,
Oh.
show up for yourself every day and see what lands, and then work with yourself. Give yourself space and just play. See what's there for you. If you're falling into, some you can call it rough edges or polarities or drama or heaviness. See if you can bring around some laughter, amusement, or give yourself space to find more of your balance, your center line. But it's life. It just gets messy, and then we learn how to shift out of
I
it.
mean,
But
yeah, this is life, and thank God it's like this. Otherwise, it'd be boring. And we'll roll with the punches if they occur. But I
um,
love to do the check-in, which is, I think, an easy thing you can do when you get up in the morning or when you have your first morning tea or coffee or whatever. Like, do you have other e- easy things to do to nurture yourself? Because I know, like, I already hear like some listeners going like, yeah, but I don't have like how should I, like, I don't know, squeeze in another 20 minutes to do whatever? And it doesn't need a lot of
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
right? It's just what are simple things you can do every day to nurture yourself? Check in.
I mean, that piece right there with the overwhelm and the exhaustion is such a big piece, and why that piece is partly what's causing so much of the dis-ease, the distress within our nervous system, which affects our menstrual cycle. Everything that affects if anytime we go in fight or flight,
Yeah.
we're stressed out, we're in drama, and I tend to be very, I like to entertain and make people laugh. So I can easily go into
Do you know
dramatic
your
things.
Enneagram type?
I am a little bit of a silly one where I'm like, get these effing labels off me. I am a dynamic human and I don't want to be limited by these little freaking labels. Like people are like, oh, it's a full moon in Aries. I'm like, cool. Let
Oh,
all of that
it doesn't
go.
need to mean anything about you. It's just it's not
So I'm
necessary.
terrible. Somebody asked me yesterday, like, what's your
Funny.
human design thing? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't know. I just am. I just am.
But I can tell you in which like energy cycle I'm right now.
I love it. I love it.
Now let's
So
go back to little things that you can do to like nurture
well,
yourself every day.
I would say if they feel overwhelmed, just maybe just comfort yourself there and
Mm,
let you know that, you know what, and whatever is going to feel nurturing and replenishing to
mm-hmm.
you right then and there. If it's like, popping on this podcast or just giving yourself a hug, or maybe you want to go out and, take some nice deep breaths, or whatever that space is, to give somehow, just because every part of ourself, no matter if we hate it, ultimately at the very root, it had a positive intention. So
Yes.
every part of ourself is designed to keep us alive. We
Yes.
have parts that
Nothing in
maybe
your
go
body's
off and
out to get you.
yeah, it's not out to get us at all. It's just we're in a culture that very much looks at that's to blame. You're the problem. This very much right now, like, cult, like good and bad, like you're bad, I'm good, and you're the blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, everything, this is just the mind assigning meaning to things. And there are things that I wish didn't happen, I wish people didn't do, but we are having a lived experience.
Mm,
So that piece of someone who's in overwhelm and exhaustion, maybe it's just resting a little bit more, and don't add another piece into that exhaustion, just finding spaces to nurture. And then once there's enough space there to nurture that, this exhaustion goes away a little bit.
yeah.
And maybe they can start getting curious, just adding in that curiosity to where is this
Yeah.
overwhelm and exhaustion coming from?
Yes.
That would be probably one of the most, and playful. So playful, yeah. But I
And
want
I
everyone
suppose
to,
meet yourself and where you're at and be like and also acknowledge that you feel fucking exhausted.
yeah,
And don't downplay it, right? Because I
yeah.
often see about my clients, oh yeah, I feel exhausted, but I don't know. Janet has it way worse, or some whatever kind of bullshit story that's playing, and it's like, sure, but yeah, but both things are equally true. You can feel absolutely exhausted, and Janet can absolutely feel exhausted. Like there's no competition or
Yeah.
anything. And just because you're apparently better off than Janet is, doesn't mean that you're hurting.
Yeah,
So
it's
meet
those
yourself
little
and acknowledge that it
polarities
feels
we get
hard.
stuck into. Yeah, it's challenging. Well, and giving ourselves those big, energetic, imaginary hugs and permission. As females, we are biologically hardwired to hold energy for around 9 months to give birth to a human baby. So one of the single greatest things we can learn to do is learn to let go and just release. So when it's so easy for us, which again, with my Moontime, I love to help women like, hey, you don't want to create a baby? Because I'm more interested in myself as creating businesses and creating creations and art and projects and whatever. So let's use that energy to create for ourselves. And
Mm-hmm.
instead of letting that energy just get caught up in life and taking care of everyone else's wants and needs. That's another thing that we easily have been programmed into is, put everyone else first. You don't matter. Put
Oh
everyone else
God, yeah.
first.
I mean, our whole society would collapse if we would just be like, no, you go fuck yourself. Like, I mean, it's yeah. I mean, this is just how
Or
our
what it's
productivity levels
thriving
work.
as we shift into putting, just uh, nurturing our own energy and putting ourselves first. What are we going to create? Maybe we're going to create thriving societies instead of the society we live in now. So perhaps
Oh,
that
absolutely. Absolutely.
is
No, but I mean, we all know, like, I mean, what is it you do, or what does it tell you in airplanes? Like, in the case of an emergency,
oh
like,
yeah, put yourself first.
put yourself first. Like, I mean, it's not really a new concept. And I think my friend's a doctor, and she told me one of her like good professors in med school, one of the first things he told them, and what stuck with her is like, you have to take care of yourself first. You cannot take care of anybody else if you're like overworked, super tired, running on caffeine, having the jitters. You're no use to anyone.
Yeah.
And that really stuck with her, that she's like, no, I go home now and go get some sleep or whatever I need to take care of my physical body and mental body as well. So I'm like, yeah, this is, yeah. But our conditioning runs often like totally against
We don't
it.
even know. I mean, so many times I'll just all of a sudden be like, oh my God. I'll just
What
wake
am
up
I
to like, I
doing?
didn't even realize I was perceiving life through that way. And again, that's why I love this. I've been calling it like subconscious change work, subconscious adjustment, subconscious,
Mm.
deprogramming, whatever, to get to these little pieces that, in my perspective and what I hear from my clients and witnessing other colleagues, clients have all been saying, like, there has been nothing else that can get to these little pieces like this particular work does, not taking away from any of the other beautiful modalities
They
that
all
are
have their
out there.
place. And
Yeah,
yes,
everything has a beauty. It's so great that we have access to all this, but this one piece that I'm like, oh, everyone, this is some good stuff. Yeah. Getting your
yeah,
energy back. Oh my God. Like that's, for
yeah.
me, that's, oh, yes, please.
Yes, and I loved that you mentioned before that I'd say you very consciously said neutrality, which is a really interesting concept when I mean, in the past couple of years, there was a lot of buzz and talking about body positivity. Um, and it's like, I get where it's coming from, and yes, I am for it as opposed to body negativity or fat shaming or whatever. But what I ultimately want, I just want neutrality. I just want my body to be as is. I don't need it to I don't know, make me feel fucking good all the time. Like it to come like at this realization is neutral. It's just my physical appearance here right now. And it will change and it is what it is.
The body. But
Yeah.
again, most humans on Earth right now are living from their analyzer and or wanting to know and think of things and analyze things and actually having lived experience. And it's no fault of anyone. Like we have been programmed to
No.
have to
Yeah,
be
yeah,
like,
absolutely. I mean, our
like
whole like
the school
education
system.
system and everything is
Yeah.
based on this. And it
Yes.
has served us well. I mean, our minds have done some incredible shit. And
I would
yeah, I
argue
mean,
that
yeah, it has served us well
it's
overall.
definitely
Probably not.
it
Everybody's pretty
served
screwed.
what it is, and all of us are kind of looking like, you guys, we're in species decline right now. Like
True.
all fingers point to we ain't gonna be here much longer unless we have some magic moments of big transformations. Like,
Yes,
so
take back,
it was
take
an
back.
experience. It's been an
It
experience
was a
of like, yeah,
ride. It was a ride.
we might need a little bit more balance. Like, trying to program everyone into being machines isn't actually our natural nature. And perhaps we could even be living a more amazing life, being more thriving and more successful and more parties and embodying amazing and everyone thriving, living in balance in a different way of being. That actually might work better. Just an idea.
Okay,
Instead
I
of
love this. I love this. How do we start? When do we start? Dana,
we've
tell
already
me, when do we
started.
start?
We're
I'm
in it.
there. I'm like,
We're
we can
in it.
carpool.
We're in it. We're in it. You read my little cute book and just open up the space for curiosity and see where it leads you next. Like
Yeah.
email me. I totally want to do some sessions with you or a session and have you experience core transformation with your endometriosis. And I'm just dying to hear your experience later to see how that shifts
Ooh,
just on your
okay.
energy
Sign
levels.
me
Like I
up.
want to see and a side piece in the physical. Do you do castor oil packs?
No, but I heard about them and I also read about them in your book. And I'm like,
That was a game changer for me. That was
so
another, I mean, I
I'm
wasn't say
already, I
that.
was
It was a
already
game changer.
Googling where can I get like organic flannel to like do casserole.
I mean, honestly, I think all my friends that have started doing it, you just order it on Amazon. Like there's a company out of
Yeah, yeah.
so there's a company I have on there listed that they're great, but like, unfortunately manufacturing is only limited when you get down to it a certain place. So old school, if you really want to go easy peasy, get some organic castor oil at your health food store and use a
Oh
t-shirt and
yeah.
then
Oh
put,
God, yeah.
old school, just get a hot water heating pack. I ordered one of those because I do it every night. I couldn't
Oh.
believe the shifts. And I already have a lot of hair. My hair,
Oh,
like
casserole is good for hair. Yeah.
oh my God, my hair will not stop growing huge. I'm like, oh my goodness. But for inflammation, that one is so physically helpful. I love castor oil packs. I
Okay.
will share my first day doing it. I kind of had a little cramping as I think it detoxed. And one of my best friends who started doing it, she's
Oh,
like, Dana, I
interesting.
think I'm allergic
Is
to
it
castor oil. I started cramping. Like I was,
unpleasant?
and I'm like, you know what? I had that weird experience too, where I thought I was allergic to it. Try it another night. Sure enough, she's emailed me or texted me a couple days later, like, been sleeping like a baby better than I have been for years. Cramping went away. I think it just detoxes so quickly. That's why it's suggested don't do castor oil packs on like the first day of your bleeding because
Mm.
it'll help encourage the flow of menstrual fluid so quickly.
Oh, okay. Mm.
So try it like around like right after you stop bleeding or when you're, ovulating, or leading up to like when you're in your premenstrual phase, your enchantress phase, that hot mess, whatever, where you can be bold. But yeah, don't do it right when you start bleeding because it will definitely, that one's a great one too. There's so many cool things that I'm so excited to share with people because it's fun. You're just like, oh my
Yeah.
God, this is great.
I mean, as with everything, right? I think as you've pointed out a couple of times, and I agree full-heartedly, curiosity and playfulness, and you just try something, and if makes you feel good, do it. I mean, that always brings me to the story when I tried sound healing for the first time. I was like, this sounds weird, but hey, you know what? Let's just roll with it for once. And I was crying like a baby, like sobbing uncontrollably and feeling totally at peace with this kind of whatever frequency I was hearing. And it was bliss. So you never know, like something might stick with you. Um, and yeah, go always follow your curiosity. And speaking of that, if people are curious to know more about you or know more about your Moontime starter kit, tell us a bit about it. What have
Yeah.
you got?
So I love to invite everyone to go to my Moontime's website, and there is a free Moontime starter kit, and it's a pretty robust kit. So you're going to get a workbook, you're going to get access to a little free workshop to learn how to track your cycle by hand. I have something else in there that I'm blanking on right now, but I want to empower females to have access to all this information that none of us really had access to. So
Mm.
this really kind of nice way to kind of start going in to learn about your menstrual cycle phases. There's, I think, a little case study in the Moontime Starter Kit. So you can connect into your cycles and start working with yourself. So I recommend starting there first and then see what opens up for you. The book that you have, Lit from Within, it's a little ebook I love. And, I wrote in the book that I'm your guide, but it's many people's wisdom. Like this is all shared knowledge and experience from
Mm-hmm.
many people. I do have an app that I came up with. It was the first menstrual moon cycle tracking app of its kind back. I think it started in 2013. It launched as an iPhone in 2014. I do tell people it's an easy access backup tool. I could give a whole week-long talk of the issues with apps. I don't love encouraging women at all to be reliant on apps.
Mm-hmm.
They're only a regurgitation of the information we put into them. So it's kind of like, and there's just so many problems. There's so many issues, and most apps are selling people's data. So I
Yeah,
love
I would
the
only
Moontime
say
app.
only the data aspect of it alone,
Yeah.
and like certain very new restrictive laws, especially in a lot of countries or in the States. I don't know. I would not
Yep.
track. I would not track something like this where
Track
it
it
could
by
be
hand.
cross-referenced with Google searches or Google
Facebook,
Maps
I mean,
data or
they
something.
might know you're pregnant before you do. Like there's so many
Oh
things.
God,
And
they most likely do. Yeah.
I think it was Natural Cycles they were found guilty in the UK for overselling their effectiveness
Mm-hmm.
because they're like, we're more effective than chemical birth control. I mean, chemical birth control only has 72% accuracy, yet like there's so many nuances to all these things. And I have a meeting with a colleague next week about the natal lunar fertility time that most all apps are not putting into it, which
Oh.
the Dr. Jonas in the 1950s in the Czech Republic was living in a very Catholic society where, only natural things were allowed. And they were trying to do the rhythm method, and which tracks the mid-cycle ovulation. Rhythm method has like a 30 to 80% accuracy at best. He discovered, him and his colleagues, off an ancient Babylonian, if I say that right, text, fragmented text, that the time a person is born, that they I think it said can ovulate or something about fertility. And so they tracked it and found, and it's in traditional Chinese medicine. They also look at this time as different names: lunar natal time, lunar natal fertility time, biorhythmic time. But the moment you're born
Mm-hmm.
is a human, that whatever that moon phase, angle phase is, when you're in your menstruating years, your ovulation years, when that 2-hour window arrives every menstrual cycle,
Mm-hmm.
if you have sperm present, you can also become spontaneously pregnant, which accounts. So when he started in the 1950s,
This is okay. I don't know. I feel like I need a gin tonic. This is insane.
so
Okay.
I mean,
What?
there's whole books. Francesca Nash has written whole books on this with Jane Bennett about this time. It's a little tricky, and I'm still working in with the calculation parts because it's hard if you go online and try to, because again, going back to technology, what are the formulas people are using? Because I've
What is
my
the
original
code behind it? Like,
yeah, what's the code? And if the code is not pointing to like NASA's correct, deck, it's not going to get you your exact thing. And then, so there's so many nuances in here, which is so fascinating, but there's a lot of pieces. So again, then going into Natural Cycles app. So if they're trying to say, oh, we're better than, whatever, obviously that's not accurate. A lot of people got pregnant in the UK based off using their app because they were just doing cervical mucus and basal body temperature charting. Plus they had been found guilty in the United States federally that people were paying, I think, like $100 a month, I guess, to them for, having total privacy, yet their data was still being sold. So it's like, but
yeah.
all apps are businesses. So if you're
Yes.
not paying for an app,
You pay
you are
somehow.
there. Yes. And
You
in
pay
the United
somehow.
States, where it's a very real thing where women may lose their freedom soon. And I mean, we don't know. It's just kind of like,
No one knows.
wait,
Yeah.
what? Wait, what? I don't want to doomsday anything, but
Yeah.
it's
How
like,
far
we're
are we
going to
away from the
downplay it.
Handmaid's
Oh, that's
Tale?
not going to happen. But it's like,
No, I
it's
mean, it's
kind of like,
already happening. It is
yeah,
already happening. I mean, we already see it, not only in the States, also in other countries. I mean, we see it happening. It's
yeah.
not like, oh, you're so like, I don't know, gloomy. No, it's actually happening. It's not
It's
when, it's, yeah,
it's
or if, it's not if.
fascinating, and I try to bring curiosity so I don't fall into fear and,
Yeah.
start having anxiety over things that haven't happened yet. My
Yes.
overactive imagination can
Oh,
project
yeah, that will not go
scenarios
well.
that, so being in that neutrality. But I love encouraging females to track their cycle by hand, get it on paper. Like, I have my Moontime journal that I
Oh, it
created
looks pretty.
thank
Yeah.
you. This is the
I like the
yeah,
font.
and
Looks pretty.
it's kind of like the 5-minute journal meets like a menstrual cycle tracking. So it helps your perspective mindset. You can
Mm-hmm.
also track all the nuances of your cycle and daily
Mm.
journals and, monthly reflections. I made it for myself because there wasn't anything like it. And I wanted a way, I like to take Queen Anne's lace as part of my natural fertility contraception, to not have kids. I'm saying that wrong.
Yeah. Contraception or
And
contraception?
okay, thank you. I'm like, that's
I
right.
mean, I'm
Yeah.
not an English native, so like, please forgive me,
Yeah,
but I
no, it's
think
right.
that's
Conception is having a kid, contraception. I'm like,
yes.
I'm supposed to be like knowing all these things. And I'm like, wait, what word is that?
Oh God. Yeah, I'm like,
Words. Like, I am
anyway.
an image. I see visions. That is how my first language is visions. Second is probably movement. Third, maybe I'm still working on the language part. It's not.
Yeah, I feel you. I feel you. I'm like, yeah,
Oh
and I mean,
God.
this, yes, said this is not my native language. So if, especially with biology terms, I'm like, that thing where like, yeah, uterus. That's what it's called.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm
Oh, they
blank,
were
and I'm
all
like, yeah,
named after male doctors who
yeah,
discovered it. It's like,
yeah,
I'm pretty sure that's
interesting.
how we all came here. So you didn't really discover the
No, we
organ that you came
discovered
through.
shit.
Like, that was there.
Yeah,
But it's,
I also
that's a
read.
Western perspective.
Oh, funny anecdote. I also recently discovered I follow a female historian on TikTok, and she elaborated on why we're giving birth, or how most of us in the Western world are giving birth. That like laying down on the bed, which makes which was always kind of like a bit baffling to me, because I'm like, I'm not like a physicist, but that doesn't make any sense
Yeah.
because things would just drop down. Why
Yeah.
would you lie?
What's the pattern in nature? We are animals. What are animals doing?
I
You
mean,
know?
giraffes don't lie down. Like,
Yeah.
it does make sense. So anyway, so that was because King Louis something something in France, who loved to watch women, and so he had to make his women give birth that way, and that kind of somehow stuck with us. So yeah, anecdote, interesting, funny stuff. So this is what I do in my free time on TikTok. Can we also find you on TikTok or any other social media, Dana?
Instagram is kind of my go-to. It's my_moontime. I just haven't been able to get into Instagram, and I've kind of repost things into Facebook, but I've been slowly like, how do I interact with everyone and not be within the social media world? I want to connect with everyone, but I'm slowly creating a community space through my website slowly. But I am on Instagram. I technically have a Facebook. I do have a Pinterest, but Instagram and email are like my jams right now. But I do want more
I get
ways to
that.
connect with women and just talk. What is it like for you? How are you doing? What do you need? You know, it's just that connection.
Well,
So
I
we're
mean, do
out
you
of
have your own
isolation.
podcast, Dana?
I do have a podcast that I have. I do have a podcast. I have not been consistent. I only do it slowly over time when I'm like, yes,
Slow and
let's
steady
talk.
wins the race. That's
Yeah.
okay.
Slowly, slowly, slowly.
Okay, so we're gonna link all of that, including the Moontime Starter Kit and the show notes, so you can feel free to check it out. And before I let you off the hook, Dana, what book are you currently reading, or what audiobook you're currently listening to?
Oh my God. I have like too many books going at the same time.
Same, girl, same.
Okay. So the
Give me
new
one.
wholeness work,
Which
Connie
one?
Ray Andreas's newest book, the new wholeness work.
Oh, okay.
That book is, if anyone's interested in experiencing like real awakening, enlightenment, essentially, she pretty much, I don't want to say the word hack, but she scientifically proved like how to experience, so you're flowing in your own resourceful balance. The wholeness work by Connie Ray Andreas. Her newest book is phenomenal. It's very
Oh,
complete,
yeah.
thorough, and it's like, again, it's all here right now. You guys, we all have it on earth. It's all here, all the tools we need. It's just a matter of getting curious and finding what
And
resonates and
like puzzling them
what
together
is.
in a way that works for you, I suppose,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
just your one and precious life. How do you want to enjoy it?
Oh, I could not have asked for better closing words than these. Dana, thank you so much for being on the scenic route with me. It was a blast to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.